boys and girls. Peter Panda and I wanted to do a short craft with you tonight before Pastor Josh gets on for expeditions. So, if you see here we have construction paper, we thought it'd be fun to cut out some hearts. So, you're going to want to take it. Peter, hold on. I didn't finish yet. You're going to want to start by folding your paper. Peter's really struggling tonight. Peter, wait, I'm going to take the scissors away. Okay, you're going to fold your piece of paper in half. You're going to take your scissors, and then you're going to cut half of a heart. You can cut now. You're going to cut out half of a heart on the paper. Then, when you unfold your half a heart, you should have a heart. Peter, what happened? What do you think happened, boys and girls? Yeah, your heart split, Peter. We're gonna have to find some tape. We can fix it. We'll find some tape. We'll fix it. But boys and girls, it's important that you listen to all the directions, huh, Peter? They should listen to all the directions so their heart can come out right when they make their craft. We'll go fix it, Peter. Let's go find some tape and fix that.
All right, well, good evening, as they just said. Our word tonight is listening. Some of you are really good at it. Others of you don't even realize that I'm talking yet because you aren't listening. I remember when I was in school, when I was in elementary, that we had to take these things called achievement tests. Now, maybe you guys have taken achievement tests before, where you have to go and fill in and make sure the bubble's filled all the way in, and you select A, B, C, or D. And you have to guess and try to figure out what the right answer is. Then you get this printout at the end of the year, and if you're young, you hand it to your parents, and they look at it and they say, "Oh, you're so smart," or "Oh boy." I did pretty well on most of those, but there was one area on those tests that I struggled with a lot. I did pretty good on the reading, and the math was good, and spelling. I was good on all of those things, but there was one area that I struggled with each year. Now, when I got to junior high and high school, thankfully they stopped putting that section on the test. The area that I struggled with was listening. They had a listening section. The teacher would read the questions out loud, and we had to listen and actually sit there and think and pay attention to what the teacher was saying, and then look at the answers and fill in the right answer. Listening takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of work. But sometimes, as we just saw with Peter Panda, we don't want to take that effort or take that work to figure it all out. Maybe you're at home and you're about to try some dangerous feat to impress your parents. And your dad's sitting on the couch, watching TV, and is like, "Probably shouldn't do that, kid." And you're not listening, you're just trying to impress them. And you jump, and you fall, and you hurt yourself. And mom comes in and is like, "Oh, my poor baby." And what does dad do? "Told you so." Why? Because we don't listen. And sometimes people have to tell us, "I told you so." And they ask you, "Why'd you do that?" And you're like, I didn't hear you, or I didn't listen. I didn't follow the instructions. What we're going to look at today is an event from the book of 2 Samuel during the life of King David. 2 Samuel chapter 18 records these events for us towards the end of David's life. David was an amazing king that God used in an extraordinary way. We see that God had taken him from a small shepherd boy who listened to his father's instructions and had brought him up to being arguably the greatest king in the nation of Israel's history. Now, he wasn't the first king. The first king was Saul. But Saul had a problem. Saul didn't like to listen to advice. Saul liked to do his own thing and hope it would work out okay. The Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs, that the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that listens or hearkens, obeys wise counsel, he who listens to wise counsel is wise. We're going to see that in our story today, we're going to meet a couple different people who listened, they heard, there's words coming in their head, but they didn't quite know what to do with those words. Towards the end of David's reign, David had a son named Absalom. And Absalom was his oldest son, and Absalom was supposed to be the next king of Israel. The problem is, Absalom didn't quite want to wait before he became king. So he got a gathering of people around him, and he was going to lead a rebellion against his father. So David ends up fleeing the country to try to protect his life and the life of those around him. And Absalom begins to chase after his father. Finally, one night, David and his men decide that they're going to turn and they're going to fight. They're now rested, they're prepared, they are ready. So David splits his group up into 3 people, 3 sections amongst 3 generals, one of them being General Joab, who had been with him since the beginning, his head general. And David begins dispersing them and setting up the plan and saying, you guys are going to go that way, you guys go this way, and you guys go that way. And he's like, all right, I'll come out with you. And they're like, no, David, you stay in the city where you are protected. We'll come back. We want you to stay here. Because David's old by this point. Okay, he still wanted to be with his men in battle, but he was too old and they didn't want him hurt out at battle. So as they're leaving, David gives this command. He's like, if any of you see Absalom, do not hurt my son Absalom. The problem is Absalom right now is the enemy. So if the soldiers were to see him, they were going to have to choose to listen to what their king said and not kill their enemy. So they're having this battle, and they have it in a different style of battlefield. A lot of times we think of a battle happening out in a field, and you can see for distance, your enemy is over there, and you're over here. This battle took place in a completely different setting. It was in the middle of a thick woods. The Bible says that more people actually died by getting stuck and caught in the woods than did by the sword. And that's what we see happens to King David's son, Absalom. Absalom was riding through, he was coming through on a mule, he was riding through, checking on all of his horses. And Absalom, he looked like he'd been in quarantine for a while. Because Absalom had really long hair. Now some of you, okay, maybe mom or dad have cut your hair, they just took the razor to it and buzzed your whole head off. Some of you, it's maybe been about 2 months since you got a haircut. All right, and you get a little shaggy there on the sideburns, okay, getting some long, scraggly hair. Those with curly hair, it's probably like poof, in an afro. Absalom didn't cut his hair very often, and he had long, flowing hair. There's not much we know about Absalom, but one of the things that the Bible repeats over and over again about Absalom was he had really long hair. And as he was riding through on his mule through the forest, the Bible says that his hair got caught in a tree. Now, I don't have that long of hair. Now, it's been 2 months since I have a haircut, okay, and my sideburns are getting a little bushy, but I cannot imagine hanging from a tree by my hair, okay, having it being pulled out. Some of you maybe with long hair, maybe you've gotten your hair stuck in a doorway before, okay, you shut your hair in the car door if you have long hair for you girls, and I can't imagine how painful that would be, and his donkey rides away underneath him, and he just keeps going, and he's like, hey, come back here, okay, I'm still here, come back. Okay, and all of his soldiers, they're all fighting the battle. And one of David's men, one of David's soldiers, who'd be an enemy of Absalom, finds him. And he remembers and says, hey, the king said we're not supposed to hurt Absalom. So you know what he does? He doesn't hurt Absalom. He goes away and he tells Joab. Now, the problem is Joab heard this same warning, but he didn't listen. He thought he knew what was better because, hey, Absalom's the enemy, by the way, and aren't we supposed to kill our enemies? So that's what Joab goes and does. Joab comes back, he sounds the alarm, he sounds the horn, and he brings all of the army back because they had been winning. It says, okay, guys, it's over now. The enemy of the king is dead. And so there's some soldiers there who they act as runners or messengers. Back in those days, they didn't have iPhones, okay? They didn't have Androids. They couldn't just call up King David back in the city, okay? They couldn't text him, okay? They couldn't FaceTime him. They had to send a messenger via running, okay, via foot, who would run back to the king. And in Joab's service, there was a couple of those runners who would go and send messages to the king. Two of them are named in 2 Samuel chapter 18. One of them is named Ahimaaz, and the other is named Cushai. Both of them would take messages from Joab to David. The problem is they had a different role. Okay, Ahimaaz, his role was to deliver the king good news. That'd be a good job to have. That'd be an awesome job. You get to tell the king good things. However, Cushai, he had to tell the king bad news. So that way, when the king from a long distance could see a messenger running towards him, he could look and say, oh, that's Ahimaaz. It's good news. Oh, that's Cushai. That's good. That's bad news. Okay, all right, I know what to do now. That would give him a bit of a warning. Okay, kind of like when you someone asks you, hey, do you want the good news or the bad news first? And they're trying to like prep you and trying to get you ready for it. Well, they would know whichever messenger they saw coming, that would mean either good news or bad news. And so Ahimaaz was so excited. He's like, we won. The enemies of the king are dead, and we defeated them, and we're awesome. And I can't wait to tell the king. Hey, Joab, can I go tell the king? And Joab's like, no. He's like, what? Why? I want to go tell the king. And Joab's like, no. And he tries explaining it to him why he cannot go and tell the king. But Ahimaaz isn't listening. Ahimaaz wants to do it. He's so excited. And so Joab looks over at Cushai and says, hey, you need to go and tell King David what you have seen. What has gone on here today? Give him the news of the battle. So Cushai goes and he begins to run off towards the king. And Ahimaaz is still standing there saying, hey, I'm the good news guy. Let me go. I want to go and tell King David what's happened. Let me go and tell. And Joab keeps telling him, no. Kind of like sometimes your parents do, and you keep asking, and they keep saying no, but you think if you ask again, they'll say a different answer. Finally, in frustration, Joab says, whatever. You're going to go anyways as soon as I turn my back, so just go. Well, Ahimaaz takes off. He runs. He knows a shortcut, and he's faster than Cushai is, and he's flying down the road as fast as he can go. David's in the city, and he looks out, and one of the people with David says, hey, there's a messenger coming. And David asks who it is, and like, it's Ahimaaz. And they're like, oh, that's good news. And so King David, he gets there, and King David says, hey, what's the news of the battle? And he tells him, hey, we won. David looked at Ahimaaz, and he says, what about my son? Because David, well, yes, he was concerned about the battle. He was most concerned about his son, whom he loved, whom he had given the command to his people, do not kill Absalom. And Ahimaaz is like, I don't know. I wasn't listening. Joab said something, but I don't remember. He'd forgotten. He hadn't listened to the message. And David's like, stand over there. Because at that point, they'd seen a second runner coming. This runner was Cushai. He gets there, and David asks him the same question. He says, yes, the enemies of the Lord are dead. And he's like, what about my son Absalom? And Cushai goes, yeah, him too. And David begins to weep and to mourn. And Ahimaaz is standing on the side, embarrassed. Because this hadn't been good news. He was supposed to tell the king good news, and yet he hadn't listened and didn't know the message he was supposed to tell. So as we think through this, as we look at this event, most of us are not a runner. Most of us don't have to run anywhere to go tell anyone a message. Okay, most of us don't have to run from our house to our neighbor's house. Okay, we don't have to run down the street. Okay, we have cell phones and things like that for that purpose. But just two things to look at. We looked at the beginning of Proverbs, okay, it says, the fool does that which is right in his own eyes, okay, but the wise person listens to counsel. We need to look at and think about, who are we listening to? Who are we getting our advice from? But also, we need to make sure that we actually listen. Pay attention. Think through, what is this person trying to tell me? Listening isn't playing on your phone or mom's giving you instructions and then mom walks away and you're like, was I supposed to do something? Because we were just sitting there nodding our head. Yeah, I'm hearing ya. Yeah. And we totally weren't listening. That's what Ahimaaz did. So what about you? Will you stop? When someone's talking to you and giving you a conversation and trying to give you instructions, will you stop and listen and pay attention? When mom tells you to clean your room later and gives you another instruction after that, and you're like, I forgot after step 1 what that was. Will you listen?